I have to start with a question for y'all. Who likes the word DevSecOps? Who likes the word? Exactly 3 people. First time I saw this word, I was like, really? Yet another buzzword? Let's put it next to AI, or nowadays LLM, and blockchain, and we got full buzzword bingo. What's next? Biz, dev, cloud, ops thingies, like just connect words together? Did you actually know that DevOps was just a coincidence that it's called DevOps? I worked with Patrick Dubois. I was lucky enough. And he thought it would sound good for a conference name, DevOps Days, because Ops Dev didn't sound right. That's the whole name why DevOps exists. However, if you look at it, we try to tear down the wall between developers and operations and tear them together, like trying to get rid of the silos. Unfortunately, it is not yet the case with security. Look at your own team. How secure is your own development team? In many companies, you will see that you'll have a security team trying to help a dozen of engineering teams, right? And you know what we do? Like, I'm an engineer. I just code around, works on my machine, ship it. Again, if we look at our Jira, who uses Jira? Or something else like Trello, something like a Kanban board. Yeah. Look at your tickets. It's always like, hey, me as a project manager, if I click on this, it needs to do that. It's always a functional thing, a feature. But things like scalability and maintainability are implicit. However, we can measure them. Security is also implicit. Do not get hacked. But how do you measure that? Are you just lucky or not? So we need to talk about how to integrate security in our systems and how we as developers need to do that as well. This is me. I look better in black and white, they say. I do a lot of Java. I am sorry for that. Don't hold it against me. But the things I will show you mainly probably will be Java code examples, but it's applicable to basically every language. Yes, I do some JavaScript. Yes, I do some C#. So it's applicable to a lot of ecosystems. The rest of it, very much not important. If we think about security, the first thing we think about and we look at is our own code. The code that you put on your Git repository, the code that you and your team created, which is great. So keep in mind that that code is only 10 to 20% of the binary that you put into production. Who of you does code reviews? Okay, the rest does pair programming. I'm good with that. So if your code reviews, who thinks he or she is a smart developer, or at least average? You do code reviews, okay, help me out. What's wrong here? Yes, it's a little small. And don't say it's Java. Yes, that's also wrong, maybe, for some people. But the thing is, I created a endpoint here. I created a endpoint to /hello. The thing is, I created my first problem already, which is a cross-site scripting issue. Because the string user is a request parameter, comes in, I don't do any sanitization, any validation, I don't even do anything with it, but I just blindly put it into the output reader. Which means that we can do something like this, which pops up an alert. Classic 101 cross-site scripting thing. However, we probably have caught this during code reviews, right? Just not, yes, cool. But let me get you to another one. I have an application over here. And obviously, I'm using the tooling from Sneak because I work for that company. And Sneak found out with my code reviews, like, hey, you've got a path traversal in your upload controller. All right, let's go there. And then it says, okay, it starts at line 31 and it ends at line 34. Let's take a look. So I'm taking a look at my upload controller. And this is a part where I upload files through a form in my Java application. Well, what is wrong here? Well, thing is, I'm having a multipart file. Multipart file is nothing more than a project representation of the post request that comes into my application. What I do here is I'm getting the original file name. Sounds right. I want to preserve that file name for whatever reason. I replace the spaces with underscores, and I use that into my output file. So I write to that upload directory and the name, the get original file name. But what if my file name was something like ... And then people came to me, yeah, but that's like, I cannot do that in curl. Obviously not in curl, but I can do that with something else. So I'm spinning up Burp Suite here. Burp Suite is a simple tool that a lot of hackers use, but I'm just using it now as a proxy. This application already is working, and let me open a browser. The browser is connected to this thing, and I have my application here. Application is not important. Let's log in. Obviously, it's user, because who needs safe passwords? I work for a security company. If I log in, I see a profile, and I can upload a picture. So let's upload a picture, choose a file. Let's choose Brian 500 for whatever reason, and upload the image. Well, this works fine. But if I go to my suite and I see my HTTP history, I can see everything that goes over the line, including this one. So let's look. We've got the request here and the response. I will go into the request in a second. I will copy it to my repeater. And in my repeater, I will explain. Well, what you see here is obviously you see a bunch of headers, like it's a post request to localhost, blah, 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 blah. Then the red part here is basically all the data from the picture. But in the middle, there's something like file name. So let's do something like /devworld. I don't know. And let's send this. And if I send this, you will see that I get a response, and that response is a 200 response. Going back to my application, or to my, in this case, my IntelliJ, and if I look that now it's not in the upload folder, and the upload folder is the Brian 500 JPEG, but you see that in the root of my system, Devworld Brian is there. That means I broke out of the upload folder, which was my intention. Can you imagine that if you run your system on a system user that is root, what happens? It can go all over the place. Trick question. What is the default user for a Docker container? Check that one. Default user for a Docker container is root. So what happens if you have this, and this is just a tutorial example of how to upload a file. And it's just as easy to break out of that, put some other stuff in it, and override a system file that does something completely different. Or even worse, upload, I don't know, if you haven't interpreted languages, upload a new Python file and let's execute that. So these things might be easy to catch if you know what you're looking for, but we are builders. We are not attackers, mainly. So it would be fun if we have tools like this available that can help you during development, and not only in your CI pipeline, because that's only bugging me. I want it when I code. So these are examples of coding examples that you can, that can go wrong. But what I said, your code is just 10 to 20% of whatever you put into production. The rest of the binary, at least, is probably frameworks and libraries. And you know that, who of you is a Java developer? Who of you keep your hands up, keep your hands up. Who of you uses Spring? Do you know how many libraries you pull in? Exactly? I don't think so. You're like, it's about 200,000. Maybe 250,000. I have no clue. You don't know how many lines of code you have. But as a team, you're responsible for the whole application, not just the code that you wrote. If something goes wrong, my product manager comes to me like, fix it, dude. In the end, I need to fix it, even if I have a library that does not work. So 80 to 90% is your open source code, or your code that you pull off the internet. Who checks that? Who looks into that? Who has guardrails around that? Not everybody. So I will bring you back to ancient history, 2017. That was before, when dinosaurs were still walking around and COVID was not a thing, right? Who have heard of Equifax, the company? Who have heard of Equifax before the hack? That is great marketing. The thing is, Equifax used their system, or their system was built on Apache Struts 2. Apache Struts 2, ancient history. Nobody hopefully uses it anymore. Nobody's shooting me yet. Fine. Anyway, it's the ground layer. It does a lot of routing for you and a lot of boilerplate work that you don't need to do yourself, because we don't want to do that. We want to focus on the core thing that makes our application better for our company. However, Apache Struts had a flaw in it. It was found and it was fixed. However, that was in March 2017. This breach happened in May, Because what happens is, it's in production, let's pick our next ticket from our Jira board. It's like, as a project manager, I want you, if you click on this, it does that. Nobody's looking at what is in production. Like at that point in time, when they push it to production, it might be A-okay. Like nothing happening yet. But it can be found over time. So they got breached. They found out 76 days later. And in the end, 140 million US customers were compromised. Not a nice thing. And I will show you what that hack actually was. I have an application here. It's obviously not the application from Equifax, but it is the same. It's based on the same Apache Struts library. And it works on, as you can see, it's on the big bad internet of Heroku. So Wi-Fi gods, please, please help me. What we can do, we can create a curl request with a specific header. This header. And I don't need to figure it out myself because just look around on the internet. Who understands this header? It's a content type, right? It's a key, value, it's a content type, this is the key, this is the value. Who recognizes the content type? Come on, we were at least 1, 2 people, great. The rest? No? 3? It's an invalid content type. And you might be like, duh. But the thing was, in Apache Struts 2, when you have an invalid content type, you go to an exceptional flow. For whatever reason, you were allowed to utilize OGNL, which is an expression language in Apache Struts. Expression languages can interfere with objects that are in memory. So you can call certain methods on objects. Or even worse, what I do here, I create new objects. I create a new process builder, which spins up a new process. I say that to the process, spin up a bash, and I give that bash an arbitrary command. So I do command injection through a header. And if you don't believe me, let's try this. I will explain in a second. I will use this one. So what I'm doing here, I'm using that header that I showed you. And I'm switching out the word command and I'm putting in the word env, just showing me the environment variable, which is just a regular Linux command. And I curl it to localhost. Well, it's not a local host. I curl it to Heroku. So let's try this. Let's remove this. All right, and let's put Heroku in. So, and what you see here is that I have, because I rerouted the output writer to an input writer, these are the environment command or environment variables of my Heroku pod now on the internet. And you might get, duh, interesting, right? But if I can do this, I might be able to create a file to put a script in on your system. Come back tomorrow, execute that script. Good luck in your post-mortem. Or even worse, I might be able to do a reverse shell attack where I initiate contact from your system to my system and I'm just waiting on a port like, come on here. And then I take over your system. Depending obviously on what privileges your user is. But again, in many cases, a Docker image runs on root. So security problems are most of the time not problems that it's a one-shot, one-kill kind of principle. Certain things need to be in place to make sure that this happens. But these were the things that came into the news. If you look at your application, if this is your application, then probably this is your code. We take good pride of that code. We do code reviews and pair programming, we just agreed. But how about that big yellow ball? The dependencies, the libraries, do you update them? What happens if there is a problem and a new patch is out? Are you okay? Can you update that? Or are you like way beyond that point already because I'm still on version 0.5 and we're already at major version 5? You know, that means a lot of extra work. So keeping track of that and keeping that in a constant pace is something you should do to make sure that this doesn't happen to you. Because we're using open source, but people that want to do harm also looking at open source because it's open. And most open source companies and most open source libraries update well enough. As in, hey, something happens, it gets disclosed, it gets fixed, and it's there. But it's up to us to make sure that it's also in our systems. Trick question, where were you December 10th, 2021? And I see some laughing faces, exactly. This one, I was about to go on vacation. Yes, it was during COVID, but the island of Bonaire, which is part of the Netherlands, was open. And I had a plane ticket. Guess what did not happen? Well, Log4j happened, obviously. The Java Champions mailing list exploded in the morning because people from Microsoft were complaining about something in Minecraft. And I was like, I don't care. I don't have kids. And then we found out it was Log4Shell. We found out in our own customer base that about 60% of the people that had a Log4Shell or Log4j library, because at that point all Log4j libraries were vulnerable, had it as a transitive dependency. Implicitly, they didn't even know if they had it. There were over 800,000 attacks in the first 72 hours automated. So time to fix, almost zero. People are, if it's disclosed, if it's publicized, people will try to hack you. We don't know how much of these attacks actually went through because nobody told me that. About 70,000 packages within Maven Central were compromised. So, Log4Shell, if you don't know what it is, basically if you're allowed to log something in your application, and a use case can be simple things like, hey, I tried to log in with a username password, wrong password, you probably say attempt 1 for user X, right? And that username gets printed. But if I use that and I print this weird string, it will actually get executed. It does a JNDI lookup. And for whatever reasons, they decided I could combine that with the LDAP protocol. But a JNDI lookup does not just only look at things, it retrieves the object. That's nice. So if I own the LDAP server, and I have a precompiled class available on my evil.com, I just point back to that class, I serve that class through HTTP, it comes in your system, and boom. It took me 20 minutes, and I'm not a hacker. It took me 20 minutes when I was like, oh, this is the principle. And something that, it looks like something like this. So I basically precompile a class evil and implements the object factory. I need to override the object instance, and I can do everything. In this case, I'm opening my calculator because, I don't know, I need to calculate my expenses. So if you don't believe that, I have an application running on this site, and if I'm logging in with Brian and do something stupid like this, you will see that over here, I can do this, yes. You will see that on the bottom, you see username Brian, right? All right, I have my HTTP and LDAP server, I have them running on this screen, like LDAP and HTTP. Oh, let's bump it up. An LDAP server and an HTTP server, so I'm now hacking my local host. Hopefully the security team does not bench me again. They did that before. Like, hey, there's weird activity on your machine. Let's block everything. So if I do something like this, I have a weird JNDI string, and I call that, and I do a weird password because I know that my username gets printed in my logs. Ta-da! The calculator. But if I can do this, I can also do the same thing as I told you with the Equifax problem. I can insert code, I can execute code, I can do a reverse shell attack, and I can do all sorts of things, and you probably won't find out, which is fun. And that's why this one was so important to patch. Even with newer Java versions, you can use this to utilize things like deserialization attacks. That's way more complicated, but it's still an engager to a lot of trouble. Won't go into that because that's a whole different talk. So, who should be responsible for security? We asked this in our State of Open Source Security survey that in most cases we do every year. And it turns out that it's a shared responsibility between developers, the security team, and classic operation folks, or DevOps engineers, or however you might call it. The thing is, it's not just, hey, it works on my machine, we have a security team to fix it. No, if you make decisions, if you are autonomous as a team, you should not only make decisions that are working, that are actually working great and fast and scalable, but they should also be secure. And to track that burden, you can leverage tools, or you can have insights on that, but you should use that. It should start with you trying to do the best thing. And probably you will forget a few things, and then the next guy in line steps up and can help you with that. But if I'm cowboying around and I'm just doing shit, sorry for my English, my security team will just get mad at me, and we will just have friction. If I'm trying to help them, they try to educate me, and we might be working together, and I might actually have fun with these guys. Depends on your security team, though. We talked about code, we talked about open source, but nowadays it's not about just your application, your binary. You need to stuff your binary into something. For instance, a container. Let's take a look at a Docker container. I did a research on Docker containers in 2019, late 2019 already. I downloaded the 10 most commonly used free base images from Docker Hub. And I scanned them for vulnerabilities. This was the result. And now I can make a lot of fun of Node.js. But truth to be told, this was just the latest tag, not a specific tag, not a downsized tag. Node.js at that point was based on a full Debian Jessie distribution. Think about it. Do you need full Debian Jessie for your micro mini service, whatever? Probably not. So strip that one down. And with that application or with that base image comes a lot of binaries, comes a lot of crap, and this can also can already be used in an attack phase. So let's do something with that. You saw this application. This runs on a Heroku. I have exactly the same application locally. But it's not just locally, it runs on a Tomcat container. Let me show you that Tomcat container just for fun. This is the Docker file for that Tomcat container. So I am building my application in a multi-stage build with Maven, and I build that application, and then I use a second stage because I need to deploy it in a Tomcat, and I do that, and I copy the things over that I need. Easy as that. First thing that went wrong, I run as root. I didn't have a privileged user. But Tomcat 8.5.21 is ancient. So the problem is, in this case, that if I go and look at what problems there are, something like this. I am a big fan of arbitrary code executions, as you can see. There was an arbitrary code execution in this Tomcat base image. And what you can do over here, it was explained, it was possible to upload a JSP server file and this and everything with a specially crafted request. And if you requested that JSP file, the code would be executed because you could do pseudo Java in that. Luckily, there is a database, my favorite database, the exploit database. So it was already created for me. It's a Python script that does that specially crafted request for me to that container. And it does two things. First phase is trying to get a JSP file in with a out println with all A's to see if it actually executes and it prints all the A's on my screen. If that works, I can do the second phase, which basically is a form and a submit button. And every time I click that submit button, whatever is in the text box will get through a runtime.getRuntime.execute. Basically, I'm creating myself a web shell. So, just to show that POC.JSP and PWN.JSP do not yet exist, I have this script loaded here. It's a Python script. So let's do check, which is the first thing. And it says, hey, you are vulnerable. Okay? So let's look at POC.JSP, and you see all A's are printed. And I'm not touching the application. I'm not touching the Java jar. Cool. Next step. PWN. Uploading web shell, it says here in the button. All right, let's try. So, PWN.JSP. I'm root. So that means I now can do anything. I just uploaded a thing. I'm not even touching your application. I'm just touching your Docker container. Have a nice weekend. So the thing is, it's not only your application anymore. There are more facets to your application to make them good in production. Well, I have just a little bit of time left. So obviously, I can go into infrastructure as code. I will not. There are a lot of people that can talk about Kubernetes way better than I can do. However, what is the solution? My boss would tell me that it's tooling, and it's my tooling. No, it's culture, process, and tooling. Start with culture. We need to make sure that we are all aligned, that security is a shared responsibility, that I need to take care of what I do, and that I need to be as secure as possible. The process, don't try to fix process, don't try to force process on people. That does not work. People will try that for 2 days, and then it's like back to the old days because, I don't know, KPIs, money, we need to ship. But pick the tooling that fits your process. Hey, I love to work in an IDE, so I can have an IDE extension in it as you can see for your code, but also for your containers. All these things we can do there. Maybe you want to do a CLI. Maybe you're more of a CLI person. I did that over here for the Docker container, and the Docker container here says, hey, you're using 8.5.21, which has 735 vulnerabilities, but you can update to 8.5.99, which only has 28 vulnerabilities, and you fix this problem. This helps me. This doesn't work against me. So don't only do that in your CI pipeline, do that all the way through your system, from coding to deployment. And if it's deployed, please keep monitoring it. We don't want to be the next Equifax. Thank you very much. My name is Brian. Hope this was useful.